It's very delayed.
There, that's better.
We'll go like this, and then we're going to call it good. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 42 of Chewing the Cud. This is a weekly live stream where we sit down at the kitchen table and discuss things related and unrelated to regenerative agriculture. The way these things usually work is we'll start off with some brief introductions. For those of you who are new to the stream, new to the YouTube, new to the podcast, whatever you're listening to or watching, and then we'll transition into the topic for the week. This week's topic is sheep management. We did a previous episode on starting with the sheep, things to think about getting into sheep or adding sheep to your farm or your ranch. And this is going to be a deep dive into how we manage sheep here on the farm and some things to think about in just day-to-day operations and how to make that work. We'll talk about that till we sort of wrap that up, however long that takes. And then the rest of the session is up to you guys. It'll be ask us anything, question, answer. It doesn't have to be related to sheep. It can be related to anything. So just keep firing them away as we're talking, and we'll try to catch up and answer everybody, but no promises because it's been getting a little bit crazy recently.
Yep. So my name is Isaac Tabman. This is Ben Hawley, and this is Connor Helton. Connor is new to the live stream. This is his your third live stream. Yeah. So it's been cool having a new perspective on the stream, both for you guys and for us. So
yep.
We're interns here at Green Pastures Farm with Greg Judy. We run around 370 head of South Pole cattle, roughly 160 St. Croix sired hair sheep. We raise guard dogs. We sell bale and rollers. We host grazing schools, which we're actually hosting one this week. We give farm tours. Did I say that already?
Yeah, no.
Anyways,
consulting.
we do a lot of different things here, and we're here to learn, from Greg and just from experience what to do, how to run a successful farm business. And so we're loving the journey, loving what we're learning, enjoying it, and that's what we're doing here. So,
and it's all about regenerative ag. That's sort of the style of management that we're all about. If you're looking for conventional advice, this is not really the place for it. But if you're looking for any sort of grass-based, regenerative-based, sustainable-based advice, you've come to the right place.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the realm of cattle and sheep.
Absolutely. And in guard dogs.
And guard dogs. We have a lot of.
We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, let's. You got anything about? Anything that happened this week that's of note?
Yeah, well, we're up to 73 calves as of today.
Yep.
We got the farm truck back. Big Stick is back.
Yep. Big Stick.
Yeah. And yesterday we had a bull get out.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so yesterday me and Greg went to go move the bulls, and one of them was just hanging back, and we didn't go check to see that the rest of them, to see that they were all up there. We moved them, and then we're driving back to get the mineral, and then there's one bull in the woods, and so
he had a hurt
leg. Yeah, he's limping
a little bit.
So this week, that's another thing we did this week. This week we brought in 28 bulls to get semen trick and yonis, and I think those three. And then get their federal ID tags. Took them into the vet, got all that testing done just for when we sell bulls in June. So those of you, that are buying a bull, we've got the list of them now. So
they're tested. We'll probably test a few more in a couple weeks, but we got a good list of them right now. Yeah. But that's where
he got hurt.
Yeah.
Because he got
something
caught in the head catch or something.
He was just fighting or
he was kicking or something. But yeah, so he's really flighty, and he ended up running through the 5-strand high tensile fence. Yeah. So
it was mostly because he was by himself.
Yeah.
And he had no clue where the rest of the bulls were. But
Yeah.
So a bad deal.
We had to cut that and then lead him back. And then bring bulls back to bring him out there. But It's all right. We got him back.
And then you and I moved him today, and
Yeah.
he was pretty.
He was all right.
Yeah, he was totally fine because he was in with everybody else. But we did a thorough search before we moved him.
Make sure he's
just
in
to
there.
make sure that nobody else is hanging out by themselves either.
Yeah.
Because the problem with the bulls, not problem, but the reason you can leave them in a paddock now is because we're giving them enormous paddocks because we're grazing them ahead of the mob right now, and so we're trying to give them really big areas and move them quick so they barely touch that grass. And when you do that, there's a lot of area that they can hang out in that you can't necessarily see. So you got to do a drive around, that's for sure. But anyway, I think that's sort of a little update from the week.
Started lambing. We did a lamb.
Yeah, we did start.
Yeah.
We did start lambing.
Started lambing, and we did a lamb drive or sheep drive.
A lamb drive.
It was a lamb drive.
Bunch of little lambs. So we'll get into that in a second, but let's just sort of take a bunch of steps backwards and let's sort of talk about Greg's decision making about how he sort of started this sheep flock, and then we'll move forward from there into day-to-day operations, and we'll just get as detailed as we feel is necessary. So do you want to kick off like some of the early decision making that Greg made with his sheep flock?
Yeah, so Greg started with cattle, and that was his main enterprise, and he was, trying to get the cattle out on their feet, get them rolling, and while working a town job. And so, that brought in complications as its own. He had to move them in the morning before he went to work in the dark, and he moved them in the evening when he got back from work in the dark. And so he didn't really have a lot of time, a free time with, working in town and doing the cattle. And so he started looking at getting into sheep, adding as a complementary enterprise to his farm. And he knew that in order to make it work for him, he had to limit the sheep moves to once a week on the weekends when he actually had a day off, and so he could actually, get some stuff done. So he made it, a priority that the sheep were, kind of second priority in that they needed to be able to make it on week moves. No wormer, no
hoof trimming,
no shearing, because they're hair sheep.
Yeah,
that's another thing that he wanted.
No tail docking.
And then he wanted them trained to single strand polywire as opposed to netting, because some of you may know netting is very fun to deal with, in the fact that it's not fun.
Oh man, it works for what it is. It's just when you're having to take it up.
And I think it's a huge tool on a smaller scale.
Yeah, but when you're running 160 ewes,
you'd have to put you'd have to fence off a ton of area with the netting, and it's just too cumbersome. Not that you can't do it, but if you could train your sheep to single wire, it's going to save you so much work.
And we'll get into that too.
Yes, and so that's what he wanted. He wanted a sheep that fit that criteria. So he started looking around at sheep, to buy, to purchase, and the big thing was the parasite resistance, because he was under the strict belief he's not going to worm these sheep, because as many of you know, when you put wormer on your animals, it kills all the microbes and everything in there, or all the bugs inside them. So then their manure has those dewormer compounds, I guess, in the manure, which then kills any kind of, or keeps any soil life or bug life from decomposing that manure. And so you're left with pretty much sterile manure. Yeah. Which you're taking an asset and turning it into a liability, because what once was helping you grow soil and increasing, your soil life and your fertility is now just becoming a sterile
waste toxic
waste. And so he didn't want to get into the wormer, so that was like the big one. And as far as hair sheep go, St. Croix is one of the top parasite resistant breeds, and so that was kind of like the starting block for him. And he started with Katahdin, Florida Native, and some Barbados Black Belly as the three breeds of ewes that he started with. I think he had some St. Croix ewes too, and then bred strictly to St. Croix rams.
That's when we say St. Croix sired.
Yeah,
it's from back then.
Yeah.
They're technically not true St. Croix sired at this point,
and they're like a cross of those four breeds.
Because once he got that initial sheep flock started, however many years ago that was, I don't even remember. he hasn't really bought in any other sheep. Like, he's sort of kept that genetic base rolling, and so the rams are from that initial mix. So they're a mix of all of those different hair sheep, parasite-resistant hair sheep breeds, and it seems to be working pretty darn well at this point.
Yeah, that's what. Starting out, you've got to make the operation fit to your schedule, because you still have to function as a human, and if you're trying to adjust what you need to do to fit what the sheep need,
it's going to be less
you got to do it the other way around.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to flip it the other way around. And I'm not saying abuse your sheep.
No,
but if you have to make them work a little bit, it's not a bad thing to make them use their work clothes a little bit, and push them a little bit to help your business,
and
to a point.
Yeah, exactly. And sheep is one of those things where, in the beginning, even if you do buy, the correct breeds for your style of management, there's still going to be a high attrition rate, most likely, bringing those sheep onto your farm, especially if they come from a ways off. And I think he got a huge portion of his flock from Oklahoma, which is a good, as Greg would say, good jag, a good ways from here. And so he's
5 hours, maybe 6 hours.
But the environment's just totally different, and so it's similar but different. And so he in the beginning he lost a lot of sheep, and that's just part of it. Those are the animals that are not gonna, either they get really wormy, or either that, or they're not respecting the hot wire training that he's doing, or something like that. And in those aspects, they're culling themselves out of the flock. And so you just have to be prepared to eat a lot of sort of loss, so to speak, like literally eat, but also figure economically eat a lot of animals, so to speak, in the beginning, in order to get that core that is going to do well on your farm. And then sheep populate so quickly, you can expand pretty fast from that sort of little central hub of good genetics, good epigenetics, if you will, and be able to grow something that really fits your management style out of that. That's sort of the advantage of the sheep thing, is that the time frame is so short for next generations compared to cattle, that you can go through that like adjustment period a lot faster. So what might take 5 to 10 years with a cattle herd will take a couple years with sheep maximum. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of advantages, but we sort of went into more of those in that previous video. If people are or previous episode, I should say, if people are interested in that. So that's like the breed aspect. But then the second piece to that is how he was going to manage them, and we already sort of hinted at that, about he didn't want to use netting. And he was going to be moving them once a week, at least at the beginning, although he knew that probably moving forward, because his ultimate goal is to quit his town job from the get. So he's like, once I quit my town job, I'm going to be able to manage these sheep more effectively and be able to move them more often and whatnot. And so, but up until that point, moving them once a week, no wormer, no tail docking, no hoof trimming, no nothing, basically just mineral. And by mineral, in the beginning, he just gave him salt. He didn't give him mineral until like 2 years ago. Other than that, they were just rocking on salt and water and fescue. No hay in the wintertime either. They were just grazing stockpile. And so given that, he also wanted to manage it with a single hot wire. He's like, that's the only way that I'm going to be able to do this, because he could not imagine using netting. And I agree. With a lot of the brushy areas that we run the sheep through, it'd just be impossible. Way. You wouldn't be able to string out netting. So the process of breaking sheep to hot wire, single hot wire, is one that is like a necessity, in my opinion, if you're gonna be doing a large scale sheep operation. I know that there's all sorts of situations where you could string multiple wires at the same time, and there's like all sorts of tech, like Kiwi tech or something like that. There's ways that you could build sort of more reinforced fence for sheep easier than netting, but at the end of the day, it is so nice to just be able to unroll a little strand of hot wire and let the sheep do their thing. Yeah. So the process that Greg went through to break his sheep to single hot wire. So in the beginning, if you want to start with netting, that's totally fine. Like, you've got your core group of sheep, and you're going to be reducing the amount of electric barrier that you're using, if you want to call it that. You can start with netting, or start with like 4 strands or 3 strands of hot wire. Of just run 3 or 4 reels. Polybraid, you know, one after the other. And then when you move them, the same deal. After about 2 weeks, you then reduce 1 wire. And you keep doing that every 2 weeks. You take a wire out, take a wire out, take a wire out.
Every month or something.
Yeah, every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it was. I'd say about 3 weeks is probably a good time frame. So every 3 weeks, take out a wire until you get down to that single wire about 12 inches off the ground.
If you have O'Brien clips, it's the fourth. We use the fourth clip from the bottom.
Yeah.
Which is like 10 to 12 inches.
10 to 12 inches from the ground. And the sheep don't really like to hop over it. They're going to try to go underneath it. So that's the reason it's so low. You would think, just jump right over it.
They could jump right over it, but they don't want to.
But they don't want to. And the other thing to also mention is the post spacing is really tight. And so in comparison to cattle. So with cattle, like for me, it's like 9 steps between posts.
It's like 12.
Which I don't know what that would be in feet. Like say
4 feet per step.
4 feet per step times 9 is like 30.
Yeah,
like 30 feet probably between posts. With sheep fence, it's like 6 steps for me. So like 3 steps less. I don't know. 12 feet between posts, something like that.
Yeah, 10, 15 maybe.
Yeah, 12, 15 feet. But in the beginning, the tighter the better. So if you're training them, I would use like 9-foot spacings or something like that, nice and tight. And you want your wires also to be tight. You don't want them to be saggy, especially in the beginning. You want it to look as rigid and intimidating as possible. But then the second most important piece to this too is, first you need the fence to be hot, very hot, like as hot as you possibly can get. It needs to be about like 7,000 kV minimum.
Yeah.
And because they need to have that immediate feedback if they touch that thing, because a sheep is not as big as because a sheep is not as big as
weren't expecting that, were you?
A sheep is not as big as a cow, and so the ground is not as good. So meaning the shock that they're going to receive with the electricity is not going to be as severe as 1,000 pounds rooted in the ground.
They won't feel it like a cow will.
Yeah, so you really need to make sure that dude's hot, especially if they have a lot of hair on them.
Yeah.
You really need to make sure that thing is 7,000 volts or more. And then the other piece is that there will be sheep that jump your fence. Like it will happen if they're not broke to it. And that's what Greg did. If one jumps the fence and keeps jumping the fence, sooner or later the entire sheep flock is going to start jumping the fence. They teach each other. He's going
to train them how to
jump.
Train the other sheep how to do it.
And then you have an entire sheep flock of escape artists, and there's no way you're going to be able to keep them in. And you just are continuous grazing sheep, and then what's the point? So
Greg would take his 22 out there,
and go and take out sheep.
Shoot a sheep and butcher it and eat it.
And sheep, we've done it. They're very easy to butcher
because when you shoot, they're not like a cow. A cow will freak out. Sheep, they're just dumb. They just kind of walk. I mean, they definitely know something's up, but they're not like wah, just run.
The only thing that'll go wah and start running around is the dogs.
Yeah. But the sheep are. I mean, they don't understand death, I guess is what it is.
A cow understands death and can smell it too, and that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, with the sheep, when you get jumpers, you need to just kill them or catch them, but you can't really catch them. So you just have to shoot them. That's and again, that's part of the loss in the beginning is once all those jumpers have been sort of, you got that habit out of the herd or flock. I'm going to keep saying herd instead of flock, but out of the group of sheep, if you get those jumpers out, then you've got a group that's going to be compliant and act like sheep, and then you're going to be a lot better off being able to train them to that single hot wire. And then once they're trained to that single hot wire, they get it. They don't really want to go out. And if they do, they want to come right back in. And so sometimes we'll have a sheep out, but for the most part,
like you said, when they get out, they want to get back in. They're not out. They're not out because they want to be out. They're out because they somehow got pushed out or
they got freaked out by something and ran through a fence or something like that. Or maybe you had a post that was too high or spacing that was too far between posts or something.
The thing is, I think sheep are more wary of the fence than the cows.
Yep.
The sheep, because like when we were running those dog fences, we ran the wire intentionally at the top clip of the O'Brien so that the sheep could walk underneath, and there was like they were split 50-50. They were looking at their buddies on the other side. They could have easily
they could have jumped and still not hit themselves.
I don't really want to go underneath there. I kind of want to go, but I don't. And so it's like I think like with a cow will test it. Like a cow will go up there and kind of maybe like flick her tail on it, maybe
lick the post
maybe
a little bit.
Brush it with her hair, see if she sees a little bit, and then eventually lick the post or the wire or whatever, and like they'll test your wire. That's why you never want to leave your fence charger off for a longer period of time. Or like a pig, once a pig gets shocked, it knows where the electric wire is. It's not going to cross it. A cow is a lot different, and I think a sheep is more
like a pig.
In between.
Yeah,
it's like it's not going to test it like a cow will.
Yep.
I mean, not that they won't get shocked, but I don't see sheep shocked very much at all, or like even near the fence. Like they respect it a lot.
It's very true. And once that happens, like the lambs figure it out very quick too, because they just want to be with the flock, and they get shocked. Like those are the ones that you'll actually see get shocked, are the lambs. So
they need a little bounce.
Yeah, but it's such a critical piece of the operation is getting your sheep broken to one single hot wire, and that's how to do it. You got to be stringent with your jumpers and get rid of them by eating them, and then your wire situation, start with 4, every 3 weeks take a wire out, and the ones that start escaping, get rid of them, and after a couple months you'll be down to one wire. And keep your post spacing tight and your fence tight in the beginning especially. I mean, it's important all the time, but we can get away with we can get away with less posts now because the sheep are just like you were saying, they don't test it, so they're so trained to it. Like we don't go cattle spacing, but we'll go farther than 9 feet. We'll be more in the
especially if it's flat.
More in the 10 to 12 foot range probably. But yeah, so that's sort of establishment, right? That's sort of how to get up and running with a low maintenance sheep flock.
You want to talk about our through the seasons, what we do as far as the sheep, lambing and bringing the rams up.
And I'll say that now the sheep are moved every other day. So he started with a weekly moves, and now it's every other day. And that's because we still are trying to prioritize the cattle, and
we could move them every
day. It's just more stuff to do. And so we move them every other day in the wintertime, sometimes less, depending on how we're rationing out their stockpile.
The thing with the sheep too is we usually give them plenty for 2 days.
Yes.
Like the cattle, we're kind of more rationing it to half day moves, and in that what they have for a half day is like depending on the year, obviously, but like that's
time of year. Yeah.
If we leave them for more than a half a day, they're going to be way pushing it.
Yep.
So like it's
unless
more of a fine
we screwed
line.
up. Yeah.
Right. It's like more of a fine line though. Whereas with the sheep, it's like we'll give them a big paddock that's plenty for 2 days, and then they'll go out there. They'll make it work. And sometimes we have to leave them an extra day, and it's not a big deal. So.
And right now during lambing season, they're staying in each paddock for about 5 days.
Yeah.
So you can. Because the sheep are so resilient with the way that Greg started it, there's a lot of wiggle room. It's just your sheep will do better the more you move them, But yeah, anyway, so I just wanted to sort of cover that because we didn't really progress to that point. And we'll touch on this a little bit, but there's 2 permanent dogs that will be in that sheep flock at all times. That's the absolute minimum, and we usually have way more than that because we're selling dogs. But we'll get to that in a second. So you want to just go over on a year sort of basis what our sheep annual cycle sort of looks like.
Yeah. So let's just start with lambing because that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Lambing here in Missouri, it's obviously dependent on where you live as far as latitude.
Yep.
In the south, it's gonna warm up and green up a lot quicker than it is in the north, and so here in Missouri, we shoot for May. Greg shoots for May 1st, lambing on pasture, and so what that kind of ensures is, the temperature's warmer. We've got plenty of green grass. So lambs cannot take cold and wet, and so anytime that it's cold and wet, we don't want to be lambing during, and so May 1st is a good date for here in Missouri. Obviously. You can tailor it to your situation. So May 1st we lamb. The lambs will all be born in about 3 weeks. From the start of lambing till the last lamb is born, and so they have a tight window that they're born in. They're growing up. What was it, around July?
Yeah, basically
June. It's like 2 or 3 months after lambing. I think it's like around July 1st.
Yeah.
We'll get the whole flock up, and by that time, I think, well, no, rams they're not mature enough to breed.
Yep.
But the ewes may start cycling. So like with a cow can cycle one cycle, or can be bred one cycle after she calves, whereas a sheep, it takes a little bit longer. They need a little bit more time to recover before they start, cycling again. And so I think it's like 4 to 6 months or something. I don't know what the exact
I don't remember what the exact month is.
But it takes a little while. So in order to, we keep the rams in with the ewes through lambing, and then like July 1st, so 2 months in.
May, June. So it's basically most of May, June, July. So like,
well, no, not all of July though.
But so like 2
months,
2 and a half
2-ish months.
Yeah.
We'll get the sheep up, sort off withers, and rams, ewes, and then we take all the ram lambs and we'll go through which ones are going to make good rams and which ones we're going to castrate or band and make withers. And so then we make all the withers, and then we turn those back out in with the sheep, with the ewes, and then the rams get sorted off of the from the sheep. They go in what we call the bachelor pad. And it's basically 2 big paddocks that we just rotate back and forth during the summer.
It's sort of a woodsy, brushy area that's close to the house. So and we have a bunch of retired / never started, never showed up to work guard dogs that live they're house dogs that live at the house, but they are
house guard dogs.
So they spend all night going and barking at coyotes and foxes and neighborhood dogs and cats and whatever. And so they're close enough to the house that they sort of get a little bit of that protection, which means we don't have to have a dog with them. And what's interesting about that is like they're pushed.
Yeah,
those rams are pushed harder than any other sheep in the entire flock, because
as far as parasite
load, because quality. Moving them back and forth from July to December 1st is what? How many months is that? July, August, September, October, November. So it's like 5 months basically of the same paddock back and forth, and the forage quality goes way down and the parasite load goes way up. And I mean, we'll supplement them with hay a little bit if we really think that they're taking it down. And these are big areas, so it's not like
we're not like starving.
They're I don't know how many acres it is. Like
it's probably 10 acres each. 5.
Yeah, maybe
10
like
acres total.
10 acres total, and it's only 5 rams or something like that. So there's plenty of area for them, but that they get pushed by December 1st, and by then we had one out of the group that just didn't make it, as in he got wormy. And so it's almost like a stress test where if those rams can handle that kind of management, they're going to do fine on anybody's operation. If they're rotating them a little bit, even just a little bit, they're going to excel. And that ram is going to, like a bull, is going to have the most influence on the genetics of their flock.
And he's going to have that huge parasite resistance in his genetics.
Yep. And so it's a stress test for us, because we're selling seed stock to understand which rams are really going to make it. Because a ram lamb can look awesome and then go through this bachelor pad situation and just fall apart, and that's a good thing for us to know, because then we know, okay, we can't sell them as seed stock, and so we'll band them and turn them into a wither. And a wither and a steer are equivalent for those who are not familiar with sheep terminology. Castrated male, and so but then put the rams back in December.
Yes, so the sheep stay out, or the rams stay out all the way until December 1st.
Yep. When
they go back in with the ewes, and that December 1st gives us May 1st lambing as far as like the ewes gestation and everything. I think it's 5 months, 6.
December, January, February, March, April. 5 months.
Yeah.
5 month gestation.
5 months. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, because then 2 months off and then 5 months separate. Yeah, it lines up.
And you can leave those rams in there, because the way sheep work is once one ewe starts to cycle, because the ram is there, all of the ewes will come into heat within that 2 to 3 week period, and all of the breeding gets done by the rams in that 2 to 3 week period, and then they're pregnant, and so they can't get doubly pregnant, and so then they're just hanging out, and the whole flock can stay together all the way through until July again. And the thing also we should talk about separating out rams is you have to be very careful that those rams either are in a situation where they physically cannot get out of it, like cattle panels, or there's no way they can smell those ewes, or hear. They can smell a ewe from so far away. So
sheep hate water, but a ram will swim a river to get to ewes.
Yeah.
So that's how they'll
go through a brick wall to figure it out.
If there's a way, they're gonna find it. Yeah. For them to get to the ewes, if they can see or smell or hear a ewe in heat.
So our recommendation on smaller acreages for separation is just get cattle panels, weld them onto a steel frame with caster wheels on the bottom, and just keep them in that pen and move it around your yard to mow your lawn or whatever. You can even
move it in with the sheep. Just keep him there with the ewes as long as he's in those cattle panels. He's not going to be able to get out, and you can just keep him on a rotation with the sheep. He's going to be happier with the ewes even though he can't breed.
Yep.
But move him around the yard, anywhere.
And obviously if you have big enough acreage, just move them far away.
Other side of the farm
where he can't see, hear, or smell them. So yeah, that's the important part there. And then all said and done, we only get the sheep up.
So let's talk about August.
Yeah, we only get the sheep up twice a year. Once for that castration and sorting, and the other piece that happens during that first sorting in July is we'll take out all the culls. So anything that has runny tails, because at that point they've gone through the spring flush, they're in the middle of the summer at that point, they're on great forage. So anything that's got a runny tail or is looking skinny or just doesn't look right, we'll just take them out. Last year we had like 55.
That was withers.
Rams,
old rams that we castrated. Old ewes,
wormy young ewes, whatever. Mm-hmm. There was 55 sheep in total.
Scrubby looking ewe lambs.
It was a scrubby bunch, and they got all taken to the sale barn and sold.
Yeah. And it's like cleaning up the sheep flock a little.
Yeah, and we do that once a year. And
being the predator.
And the castration, and then because we sell seed stock, we don't sell lamb, grass-fed lamb. We use that for our own consumption. We get them up in August for a sheep sale, and we organize our sheep sale to happen on one weekend. So we can
over
3 days, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday usually. We'll get all the sheep up, bring them in, sort off the ones we're going to sell, sort off the ones we're going to keep, kick the ones we're going to keep back out into the pasture, and then those sheep will stay in that corral for that weekend as people come in and buy ewes, which are hard to come by because there's not that many of them.
Ewe lambs, ram
lambs, and yeah, we get to do that. That's always a fun weekend. We get to meet a lot of people.
It's not fun getting them up there and sorting them, but it's fun.
Yep.
Selling them to people.
Yep.
We also sell guard dogs at that point too.
Yep, absolutely. Usually accompanying a cadre of sheep to somebody, and yeah, they get sold all over the country.
Some of you guys on there. Bought sheep from us.
Bought sheep from us in the past, and so yeah, and that's about it as far as management's concerned. We give them mineral, we give them water, we give them grass. We get them up twice a year.
In the wintertime, if you have green stockpile, and you might have already touched on this.
I hadn't mentioned it actually.
If you have green stockpile, as in like fescue. You know, where it's got a little bit of green in the base, and you've got your sheep on that green fescue, they don't need any hay, and they don't need any water. In fact, they won't take any water or hay.
Greg tried it with water in the beginning, and they wouldn't touch it.
He put a tank out there, marked where the water was, and it was at the same spot the next day, and it was frozen over.
Hadn't taken a single sip out of the water. So he's just like, all right, we're not going to eat it. We're not going to drink any water.
There was an old shepherd that told him about that back when he was just starting.
And he didn't believe it.
Yeah, that's why he had to try it, which is good. I mean, it's good to try it.
And as far as people being concerned about the guard dogs in the wintertime, they find a way to drink water.
Most of the paddocks the sheep are rotating around have pond nearby, so they chew a
hole in the ice, or they eat snow or something like that. Those dogs are a hardy bunch.
They're built for the winter.
Like it was negative 25, and we had puppies out there, and they were just rolling around in the snow. They were going in. There was like in the hole in the ice that we had cut for, because it got so cold that we were afraid the dogs weren't going to be able to chew through that ice. So we cut a hole in one of the ponds, a couple of the ponds, for them to be able to drink. And they were playing in the water.
They got wet.
It got wet. Negative 25.
I don't know if they did it when it was that cold, but like
midwinter, below single digits, below zero, they were getting wet, and they were just loving it. You have no idea.
You'd get there to the paddock and they're just their hair's all wet and sopped, or not sopping, but
frozen,
kind of wet.
Yeah.
And frozen. Hey guys.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, you guys are tough.
And so let's just touch on this briefly, because this is going to be a whole other topic as far as livestock guardian dog enterprises, but that's the way that we protect the sheep, is livestock guardian dogs. People have asked about guard llamas and guard donkeys and guard emus, believe it or not. And I've talked about this in the past, but
I should get an emu.
I know emus are so cool, but
they're kind of mean, aren't they?
They can be, but it's a big
I guess that
bird.
they're supposed to be
it's
mean.
like a dinosaur.
Emu. Kind of want them to be mean.
And people are like the reason why those options are so attractive is because all those things. I don't know about the emu, but all those things, llamas and donkeys, alpacas maybe, I don't know. Well, they're grazers, so you don't have to supplement them with anything other than the food you're already giving the sheep in the form of grass. And so that's versus a dog. Dog food's expensive compared to grass and the hay and anything else, and so it's expensive to maintain a guard dog. But when you factor in, this is the reason why Greg doesn't run guard llamas or guard donkeys, is because if a pack of either coyotes or more likely just neighborhood dogs, stray dogs, house dogs, whatever, they'll gang up sometimes and come roaring out to a sheep flock just to wreak some havoc, and they'll kill a bunch of sheep by chasing them around, biting them up, that kind of stuff. And if you've got a guard llama or a guard donkey in there, maybe they are aggressive and maybe they will try to fight off a couple of them, but when there's a whole pack of predators, because that's what they are, in with your sheep, the chances are that guard llama or guard donkey, it's a prey animal deep down. As much as it's been bred to, guard its little fluffy counterparts or whatever, it's going to turn around and run.
Yeah.
And if it runs away, your sheep are just completely helpless. A guard dog, if you've got a couple of them especially, they're just going to stay and fight because they have nowhere to run to. So, and plus, really, like, the point of the guard dog is the noise. And like a donkey or a llama does not make the kind of noise that a guard dog does.
They can be loud, but not like a guard dog.
Loud. Like, the guard dog can smell you coming. Like, if the wind's pointing in the right direction, they can smell and hear us over a mile away. Easy.
You can't sneak up
on them. And they'll just bark their absolute ass off. So loud and intimidating, you'd think they're going to tear your throat out if you go in there. And that's the point, is everything else, people included, are like, man, I don't really want to go in there and mess with those sheep. I don't know about that crazy ass dog that's up there. And so that's really the reason. And if push comes to shove, they will fight and kill stuff if they have to. Like, there was a post,
especially lady, she would mess a coyote up.
Yeah, there was a post about somebody who bought a guard dog from Greg.
One of ladies.
One lady and Big Boy. If people are familiar with our guard dogs, it was one of their counterparts, I'm pretty sure. And he killed a coyote the other week or whatever. So they'll do it if it really comes down to it. But really, they're there for the noise, and that's something that those other animals can't offer you, is that early warning system as far as perception and also as far as noise is concerned. And it's a predator at the end of the day. When push comes to shove, it's not going to turn around and run. It's going to try to fight. Mm-hmm. So that's really, it's just peace of mind. Once you've got
It's got teeth.
Yeah, once you've got the guard dog situation figured out, I mean, Greg has not had, knock on wood, very lightly, so I don't shake the camera. Greg hasn't had any predator problems whatsoever with the sheep since the guard dogs. So I don't blame him. There's a lot of guard dogs in there.
There's even a story, so he was running sheep, it had to be 5-10 years ago or whatever, but he had 2 guard dogs in with the sheep, and there was
Rue was the name of the guard dog. Yeah. I think it was Rue, I'm pretty sure.
His neighbor had goats, and I think she had an Anatolian Shepherd in with her goats.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about a different story, but yeah, I have another one. But anyway,
something jumped into the pen with the goats and the dog, grabbed the dog, killed it, dragged it out,
jumped back over the
out,
fence,
carrying the dog.
Yeah.
And
then
it was like messing with like
fence.
neighbors. Something was messing with neighbors' dogs. Never messed with Greg's sheep. Didn't find a single ewe dead. Didn't find any sign that that they had been messing with the sheep. He had the cows in that direction, and there was one of the steers. Its tail was bitten off. Something bit off its tail, and they think it was the neighbor's
like bull
mastiff.
Yeah, or something.
But or maybe a cougar or something.
Mountain lion. But
something
big
to tear up an Anatolian shepherd. But it was a single dog.
Yep, not a pack.
And it wasn't a pack, and he had like 2 or 3 guard dogs in there with the sheep. And if like a predator hears 3 dogs barking, I mean, who knows how many others are with them, and they're not, like I said, they're not likely to test it out.
And the thing though to recognize is that the guard dog is not really suited for every sheep situation. So the reason why we can't run the sheep on the majority of the acreage on the farm is because of the people that are around the farm, just residents that are living, and they have house dogs, and as well as they like to sleep at night, like most people. And so if the dogs are around, they do their job all night long and bark.
Did you hear Smokey the other night?
Yeah, I mean, Smokey's not even former guard dog. Never showed up to work.
He was a group of the puppies that they bought to raise, and he was too cute to make a guard dog. And
so now he's a house dog.
Like Greg gave them to Jan for Valentine's Day or something.
Something like that. Anyway, but they are loud, and and that's what they're bred to do, is they bark all night long. And so you'll have some very upset neighbors if you've got a pack of guard dogs that are guarding your sheep all night long. The other thing is other neighborhood dogs. There's just a high likelihood that if they come in and mess with the sheep, that they're going to end up dead. And so the last thing that you need to explain that you're going to want to explain is to a neighbor about the fact that your guard dog absolutely mutilated their, little house dog that was just going in to play around with the sheep. I don't even think you'd see the chihuahua. No. I think he'd get eaten.
Or like a yeah.
But even a bigger dog,
like a collie was trying.
That was a story that I was going to say, is that Greg, when he first started with the sheep, there were some new people that moved in somewhere around here, and they'd come out into the country to from, I think they lived in Colombia or something like that, and they brought their border collie. And when they came out here, they didn't fence their border collie into their yard. They just let him roam around the neighborhood, and he ended up in the sheep flock. And Greg had seen him once in there, and he had gone to the neighbor and been like, "Listen, I've got a bunch of guard dogs out there, and I just don't want anything to happen to your dog if they get in with if he gets in with the sheep, because they're trained to protect the sheep." And the people didn't really take very kindly to it, and were like, "Oh, I came out here to let my dog roam around or whatever," and so they didn't either leash the dog up or put it in a fenced area or whatever. And then Greg went out there one day, and the collie was just going to herd the sheep, because that's what they're bred to do. And so was walking, sneaking up to the sheep to go and try to work them around or whatever. And I'm pretty sure it was a Roo. Their big Great Pyrenees just hit that thing like a truck and pinned it on the ground, and was about to grab it and start shaking it back and forth by the throat.
I think
Greg
it started to.
Greg ran over and jammed a stick in the guard dog's mouth, Rue's mouth, and pried it open so he could get the little collie out of her mouth, and then brought the dog to the neighbors and was like, "Chain your dog up!" Like, it was like moments away from being dead. And so those are just the situations that you got to recognize, is that they're dogs, but they're not your like everyday house dogs. They're totally nice to people, and they would never be aggressive towards a human. We go and pet them all the time, but towards other people's house dogs, and the fact that they bark all night, if you're in a neighborhood situation, you're probably going to have to figure out another way of keeping your sheep protected, because it's not going to be a viable solution using dogs.
Last year we got to see Mammoth beat Big Boy. So we got Big Boy back. There was a gentleman in Ohio who was raising sheep, and he bought Big Boy to guard his sheep, and Big Boy was doing good, but then he just wouldn't eat. Big Boy wouldn't, because the guy had the same feeder, had the same food, I think.
Yep.
Had bought a bag with him, and just something about that stress of being in a new environment, he couldn't get Big Boy to eat. He would bring him hamburger and that was the only way he could get Big Boy to eat was hamburger out of his hand. And anyways, long story short, he brought Big Boy back to us, and so because he wasn't working out, and it was better for the dog to be here, we kicked him in with the sheep, and we had Mammoth and the little old female at the time were our two, big guard dogs, and Big Boy Mammoth came up to Big Boy, and like Big Boy was standing there, and Mammoth was trying to assert his dominance, and then Big Boy like snarled his teeth, and they both went up like a batch of lions, like snarling, and Mammoth threw Big Boy down to the ground, just started biting him. He just bit him right in the belly, and Big Boy was just doing all he could to try to defend it. Couldn't do anything. Just like the power, like if that was not a big dog,
because they were both they're both like 125 pounds.
It would be dead. If Mammoth wanted to kill Big Boy, he could have killed him. He was just trying to assert his dominance or whatever.
They're super awesome at their job and really cool, but it's you just got to know the situation. So guard dogs, you just got to make sure that they're always fed, because when they get hungry is when problems can start to happen. They'll start to roam. They might start nibbling on sheep, something like that. So always keep them fed. We have a gravity flow feeder out there that's in a cattle panel cage, essentially, where the dog can slip underneath this little gap in the cattle panels and go in and eat out of the gravity flow feeder. But the sheep can't, because the sheep will eat dog kibble. It won't eat meat. If you can throw meat scraps out there if you want to feed your dog some meat scraps, but I would say from a nutrition standpoint, you really should have kibble for your dogs, because do what you want, obviously, that's your dogs or whatever, but it's very hard to keep that meat from going rancid in the summertime, and they're just probably not getting all of the vitamins and minerals and that they need, because that's what dog feed is engineered for.
And I also wonder if, and this is just a hunch, but like feeding the meat draws more of that predatory instinct, so that if lambing happens and they smell blood, like a trigger goes off.
It's like, it's my breakfast.
If they've never, obviously they could kill things like in everyday life and eat them. So maybe it's like, maybe I'm just blowing hot air, but just if you're just feeding them kibble, there's less of a chance of them, being aggressive towards the sheep. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just,
but
take it for what it is.
If you're going to feed kibble, and I recommend that you should feed kibble, you need to figure out a way to keep the sheep from eating the kibble, because the sheep will develop a taste for the dog food, and dog food is expensive to be feeding the sheep. So make sure you've got a little cage deal to keep your sheep out of your dog feed.
That went a long ways.
I know, it was good. We started a little early. We went a little late as far as that discussion, though, but I've gotten a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I think we covered almost everything that I've had people ask related to sheep. And now it's out there for the people. So
for the fans,
we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. I'm sure there's a bunch. Let's just scroll to the top and see what we got.
All right. So the first one's the one that you saw.
Yep.
I may have an opportunity to lease 2 40-acre hay fields, but they have no trees. What are y'all's thoughts?
So,
lease as in graze?
Yeah, I'm assuming. And the immediate issue that they're addressing is the fact that there's no shade. I would make sure. Well, it also depends on where you are, where you're located, how hot it gets in the summertime. I'm assuming they're in a similar environment. We're just going to go with that at this point. I would say make sure that whatever you're raising is heat tolerant, because regardless of what you're going to do, you're not going to have a ton of shade. Mm-hmm. You can't just plant trees and have them grow. That takes decades for them to actually throw enough shade that it's useful.
If you're leasing, they're probably not going to want you to plant trees in the middle of your hayfield.
You're just going to have to get creative.
There's different shade designs that people have made, like what's that guy's name? Jordan Green in Virginia. He made one. He took a hay wagon chassis and big steel pipes with like elbows or whatever, and then he ran just like a shade cloth over it, just so that they could get in underneath there and get some shade, and then he could just pull it around the pastures. Something as simple as if you drove like steel posts in the ground or something and wrapped like some kind of pole to it, and then just had some shade, 4 poles holding the shade up, or I don't know.
You're gonna have to get creative.
Yeah,
is what is really the bottom line. I don't know if you got any ideas.
And it also depends on how. If depending on how many you're running
and what
animals,
you're running,
and what you're running, you probably. I don't know the actual like math to it, but you probably need to make sure everything can get under the shade during the heat.
Yep.
So whatever you're...
And if it's cattle, it's gonna have to be a lot sturdier than if it's sheep.
Yep.
Just because cattle will rub on everything. And if a sheep rubs on something and it's 100 pounds, it doesn't have to be that built in order to not fall over. If a cow starts rubbing on it and it's 1,000 pounds,
that puppy's got to be strong.
That's got to be strong. As Greg would say, stout.
It's got to be stout.
You got any ideas as far as shade situations? Like what to do?
Yeah, you know? I mean, I think, I don't know, I've seen you could essentially make like a chicken tractor but without like sides and then have the shade cloth over it. Or you could take like hoops from like a greenhouse or something and then make some kind of base and have wheels on it.
Yeah.
Just have...
We were at a farm walk in North Missouri, and a guy, and I'm not gonna say his name.
Yeah.
You know who he is.
Yeah.
He had a shade mobile, but he had it on runners. So basically, it was probably 20 feet long by like 8 or 10 feet wide, and it was on steel pipe. It had like runners and then a chain, and then it had these braces and then a big angled frame that you could then take like the little one of those bungees with the balls on the end. There's a name for them.
I don't know.
Like tarp bungees or whatever.
I know what you're talking about.
And use like a shade cloth and like bungee that around. He like made the roof the measure, or the tarp the measurement of the roof, and then you could just bungee it to that top, and then that's strong enough that cattle could rub on it all they wanted, and it didn't phase it. And the nice thing about that, it's got a low center of gravity because it's not up on wheels. It's not going to tip over as well. And even if it does tip over, he's like, you just pull it back over. If like a wind rolls it and picks it up and rolls it, it's only going to roll it a couple times. It's not going to, it's not like it's going to
turn into a beach umbrella in a windstorm.
It's basically like a big box, like a framed box with a tarp on top. And so it like would roll on its side, and he'd just go over there and hook a chain to it with his four-wheeler and pull it back, tip it back over, and then you could just pull it, throughout the paddock. And then it could even go on the side of hills and stuff because, like you said, it wasn't on wheels.
Yeah,
that might be an option. You wouldn't be able to take it down the road probably.
Yeah.
Or you could cross the road, but you wouldn't be able to.
Yep. Drag it very far.
And you wouldn't have to go that big either. You could go smaller.
Yep.
But that's an idea.
You just gotta get creative. That's the bottom line. Use what the resources you have.
Mm-hmm.
Understand your landowner and what they're going to tolerate, what they're not going to tolerate. And you're just going to have to play it by ear, figure it out, get creative. Little farmer ingenuity goes a long way. Who knows? Maybe you start making something and you start selling it to, your friends or whatever. If you got a really good situation for shade, you never know. Could be the next big thing.
Could be.
What do we got? Anything else?
Does your single polywire keep in the guard dogs?
Yes and no. If the guard dogs want to leave, they can leave. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult to keep a dog in, just because they're creative.
Netting will keep a dog in.
Yeah, netting will 100% keep a dog in, but because we don't use netting, they figure out how to jump over.
They'll get going real fast and run, and then duck underneath it, just slip underneath it. Plus, they got enough hair on them that it kind of insulates them. But
and even on our farms with our perimeter fence, they figure out a way to get through that, through gates, under gates, stuff like that. They're super creative when it comes to leaving. So therefore, you need to just make it so there's no real reason to want to leave.
They got food.
That's where their food is.
They're bonded to the sheep.
Because you train them since they were puppies to be bonded onto the sheep. They're not... If they do start roaming, there's a couple different things you could do. If they're a male and a female and they're not fixed, as in they're intact, they still have their reproductive parts, you can try to either spay them or neuter them, and that will reduce the reason to roam, and that's what we did to we just did that to one of our best guard dogs. You'd argue, why don't you breed with Lady because she's the best dominant dog that you've got, so why wouldn't you want puppies from that? I see that argument, but I also see the argument with the fact that the only reason she ever left the flock was because she was in heat. And so that's just, as soon as the dog leaves the flock, that's when bad stuff starts to happen. They get hit by a car, they get shot on somebody else's property. It's just not a good deal. So
even the other day, every other guard dog, big guard, mature guard dog left, and because Sheila was in heat, Sheila was in heat, so Big Boy followed, so the wild dog followed, so Sarah followed. Lady stayed in with the sheep, and she was in there by herself.
Yep.
For it was like 4 days
something like that. So getting them fixed is option one. If you really don't want to do that, you could try putting what we would call a drag on the dog, and this is sort of a touchy solution because we've had it backfire on us with dogs, and they just go completely wild on you doing it. But it's worked in the past for Greg, I guess. And what he's done in the past is take just a dog collar, normal standard dog collar, and a little length of chain, and then tie maybe a foot piece of like heavy duty sidewall from either an earth moving tire or a tractor tire. Yeah, just like a big heavy piece of rubber, and it hits their front legs. You don't want it super long, but you don't want it really short either, because you don't really want them to have to be lifting it constantly. But just sort of happy medium of kind of on the ground, kind of not. And it hits their front legs, so it's really hard for them to run and move very fast without there being a lot of effort and resistance. And so that's even more reason to not go anywhere, is to just eat and stay where you're at. And you do that for a period of time, and then you take it off, and hopefully they stay in. But we've had a backfire on us where the dogs just completely freak out. They've got this thing attached to them, and we went from having this one dog that we called a wild dog that we could pet him when we first got here. And we put a drag on him because he was roaming, and we
freaked him out.
Absolutely freaked him out. The first time they did it before we got here, he got beat up so badly that they had to bring him into the stock trailer and get stitches and the whole deal. But we did it a second time when we were here, because he started roaming again and absolutely freaked out, would not move with the sheep. So we took it off of him, and that was the last time we ever caught him, ever.
Touched him.
He is so crafty when it comes to, he's totally comfortable when you're in the paddock just doing a sheep move, something like that. But even with a sheep move, he'll go zipping out of the paddock when you move the sheep and wait for you to leave. The
closest he'll ever get is like 20 feet away. That's the closest he's been to me since we put that drag on.
Yep. And when the sheep move happens, he'll be 100 yards away, 500 yards away, just watching off in a different paddock. And then when you leave, he'll figure out a way to get back into the sheep. Mm-hmm. And even we try to get the sheep up into the corral to get him in the corral to be able to sell him, or not sell him, to be able to get rid of him, and he won't go in the corral. He knows, and he'll be 500 yards away from the sheep. But if you're just going in there doing your normal thing, not doing checking mineral, filling dog food or whatever, 20 feet, 50 feet, he'll be right there.
Tail wagging, smile on his face.
He's a problem though, because he's training some of the younger dogs to try to roam a little bit. So we're probably just gonna have to put him down, because that's the problem with the guard dog business. Is these dogs, when they're trained to be guard dogs, when they don't work out, they're not. You can't have them as pets because they're not pets. They're basically a wild dog. They're a couple steps away from a coyote or a wolf, and so they just have to be put down because they've been trained for a specific purpose and they don't fulfill that purpose, so they just can't. They can't really exist anywhere.
You can't just let them go free, because they're going to be, it's like letting anything
it's the biggest
go free.
It's the biggest downside to the guard dog business, really, is dealing with guard dogs that don't work out.
I would put a lot of emphasis on be cautious if you want to get into
the guard dog business. Yep.
Don't think it's going to be very easy, because it's not. It's not that it's not not that it's not rewarding.
Yep.
But it's not easy.
No. It's a lot of work. So anyway,
and you can do everything right, and it can still go wrong. So just have that in mind.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, long story short, the single wire doesn't really keep the dogs in. It's just that a good dog doesn't want to leave. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the short answer to that. Anything else?
George Heller is asking how many lambs have been born so far.
I have no idea.
Probably 20 or 30.
20 or 30. I mean, we haven't been in there in 2 days, so there's probably more
now.
Yeah, they're probably cranking at this point.
Yep.
It just goes from being like there'll be 20 or 30 in there, and then you go to bed, you wake up in the morning, and there'll be 160. It feels like that's how it works.
Mm-hmm. I bet you next time we go there, almost everybody's lambed.
Yeah.
Or close to it.
Close to it. It'll be nuts. So nuts.
So someone said they sent their question to your DMs because it's not letting them post it.
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't access my DMs right now because I'm using my phone to film this.
They said both, so
okay, cool.
I have it.
Isaac will check his. We got one in the meantime.
We've got another question. Any updates on the mineral experiment?
We sort of have an update. Yeah. So from the, I'm just trying to figure out how I want to say this.
Yes.
So for those who are not familiar with the different mineral experiment, I'll give a very quick overview. We were under the impression that we were having some issues potentially with our free choice program. Some issues potentially with under mineralization of the animals, maybe some cadmium toxicity as well. We will do once this experiment is fully flushed out, which will be probably towards the end of our time being here, we will do a live stream dedicated towards the mineral experiment, the great mineral experiment, and we will go into depth about why this all makes sense and what happened. Anyway, the short version though, which is not really short, is the free choice we thought we were having some issues with. We still had mothers that weren't taking their calves. We had some problems with pink eye last year. We were noticing that there's potentially some cadmium toxicity in some of the older cows. And so it was sort of all leading us down the road of thinking that maybe this free choice, they were getting most of what they needed, but not all of it. And so we decided, okay, let's do a little experiment with some information that we learned from our seminar with Steve Campbell.
Right here, actually.
And basically to get more mineral into the cattle, what we've been doing for the past, basically since right before calving season in March, we started them on this specific sort of kind of salt that's a lot less processed, so there's a lot more minerals in the sea salt itself. And then we started using a pre-mixed mineral that's not sourced from China, so it doesn't have any of that cadmium in it. And we would mix those two together in a 2-to-1 ratio, like two 50-pound bags of this special salt and one 50-pound bag of this pre-mixed mineral, mix that together, and then put about 50 pounds of that mix into a feed trough, and then maybe four or at this point like 2 gallons of this raw whole apple cider vinegar as an attractant to get them to consume more of the mineral and more of the salt. The theory is by consuming more of the salt and more of the mineral, we're going to up their mineral intake. We're going to reduce that cadmium, which with the cadmium toxicity, you wouldn't necessarily see those results until a lot later, but that's another conversation. Really what we're looking for is less abandonment of calves by mothers, because that's a potential mineral issue. Less pink eye. We haven't flushed that out yet. And just healthier animals in general. Sort of working on that, increasing that positive epigenetic situation with those animals. We have run into the problem so far, and this is part of the reason why Chewing the Cud has been inconsistent, is we've had a lot of mothers in comparison to last year have troubles with their calves, meaning either abandoning them, not taking them initially and then taking them, some other issues. And so the other day we basically sat down with Greg and we were like, there's got to be something that's different here, because the weather's basically 100% the same. I mean, very comparable to last year. There's really nothing that's different other than what we did with that mineral. And we kept their free choice in there, but what started to happen was they almost stopped consumption on the free choice because they developed that taste for the vinegar and they were eating that mineral at high levels. And so we came to the conclusion that they're probably overeating on that salt and not getting some of the minerals that they are used to. For years and years and years, Greg's been using free choice. And so those mothers are just used to getting that kind of mineral. And so it's detrimentally affecting them. I'm not saying that Steve Campbell stuff is necessarily wrong, because we haven't finished this whole conversation yet, or experiment, I should say. But based on what we're seeing now, we decided we're just going to flip back to free choice to get calving out of the way. And then maybe later in the season, when most of the calves are done, we'll reintroduce that mineral program and see if we see some improved results. The bulls are still on it right now, and we haven't noticed any issues with the bulls, but we're not in pink eye season yet, so we'll see how that goes. But that's sort of a little update on the situation. That's what it is. It's an experiment. We're trying out some new things. We'll report to you guys as we sort of learn more, but at this point, I think the jury's still out. We're not 100% sold on this new mineral program, and part of that might be just because Greg's animals aren't used to it yet. We did give them enough of a runway into the calving season.
And we introduced it in a poor time, before calving.
Right before calving. But the theory was, it would help calving. Like if we could up their mineral intake right before calving, we were going to be a lot better off. And it turns out, it seems our anecdotal evidence, observational evidence, seems to be in contradiction to that. It seems that they're actually lacking some mineral, and that could be our fault in the way that we're administering it. It could be just Greg's animals are not used to it.
It could be a
number of reasons, but the correlation is the only thing we changed was the mineral program, and we're seeing a massive increase in calving issues this year. And so we're turning it on its head. We're going back to free choice for the rest of calving season, and their intake has already skyrocketed on the free choice. So we'll see. Maybe it's too little, too late, and it won't make much of a difference because we already did the damage early on with not giving them what they needed. But
the thing is, they had the free choice, which you already talked about.
Yeah, they had the free choice, but I think really what it was is the attractant. They were eating that. They were overeating on that salt, so they didn't feel the need to eat the mineral, even though they actually did need it. You know, they were like, "Oh, I've got too much salt. Don't need it anymore." You know, but they really did need it. So, anyway, update again. We will do an in-depth. That's the overview version. There's a whole episode's worth of information once this thing is all said and done. And we won't see the full results of this because it's going to be a multi-year process to be able to fully flesh it out. But end of the year, I promise, we will do a full episode devoted to the mineral experiment, the great mineral experiment. So,
I got a doozer.
All right, let's hear the doozer because I'm going to have to recover after that. I'm sweating.
I know, I'm sweating just thinking about it. It might be worth doing this as a topic itself.
All right, well, maybe we'll do a quick version and maybe we'll do an in-depth version later.
So, in all of our breeding programs, we breed to improve undesirable traits by breeding to sires that are stronger in the area that the female is weaker. The way Greg runs everything together, how does he improve his herd quickly other than by culling, as it only gets rid of things you don't like and doesn't correct it from happening again next year? How does he prevent inbreeding and improve these weaknesses without bringing in outside genetics?
Wow, there's a bunch of parts to that question. I'm trying to understand the first part.
So your females have undesirable traits. So you pick the sire that is strong in that area.
Yep.
Breed them to the females. The offspring are gonna be more desirable in that trait than their mothers. That's what he's doing, and he's asking the way that Greg is running it.
How do you get more positive influence without
as opposed to
animals?
Or with like only culling? But that's not all that we do. That's kind of what he's asking. So basically,
just watch your.
Sorry,
you're good. Just the people are like,
I'm getting a little bit of vertigo.
Yeah.
We're choosing seed stock from out of Greg's herd that is fits all the boxes, prime genetics. We're not just like culling isn't the only way that we are improving the genetics. We're also taking the cream of the crop, so to speak, taking those animals and breeding them back to the females, inbreeding. So,
but technically doing that, you're still only culling. Like you know what I mean. But
you're not bringing in new genetics.
But what you were about to get at, I think, is the line breeding situation is sort of how Greg is able to amplify positive traits, and so what. Okay, it's hard to unpack this, so I'm just trying to like get my thoughts in order here. But okay, you've got this is the way I think about it, right? And this may or may not answer your question. So you have a female, right? We'll call her female A, right? In her genetic makeup, she makes up 50% of her calf, right? Genetically. Within that 50%, there's a spectrum based on, the genetic recombination and just pure dumb luck about how that calf is going to turn out, right? On one end of the spectrum is the best it possibly could be with given her genetics of that 50%. I'm talking about just the 50% that she's contributing. On one end of the spectrum, it's like as good as she can, as good a calf as she could possibly throw. On the other end of the spectrum is as dinky of a calf as she could possibly throw. And depending on the female, that spectrum might shift where her upper end is going to be a lot higher than another female's upper end And therefore, her lower end is going to be a lot higher than another female's lower end. But there's still going to be a spectrum as far as like how good an offspring she's going to throw, right? Then the other 50% of that is coming from your bull or from your sire, right? So if you're choosing bulls that fit your criteria, you've got some from your stock. That 50% that came from his mother, you're choosing bulls that were on that upper tier from their mother's 50%, right? And so it's a really good looking calf. You put that, like a good bull calf grows into a really stud looking bull. That bull then gets bred to that, like the offspring of, okay, I'm just going to explain line breeding, but basically what happens is if you've got female A, right? She breeds to bull A. You get a heifer female. That's 50% of that bull, 50% of the mother. That might be, her spectrum might be a little bit on the low end, right? But that bull, because he was chosen out of the crop, is on the high end of his mother's spectrum, if that makes any sense, right? So you've got a high quality bull being bred to a medium tier female, right? So you get half medium tier, half high tier in that heifer, right? Her spectrum of her influence is now going to be shifted because of her father's influence a little bit in the right direction. She has a heifer calf. She's bred back to her father,
who's a good bull.
Who's a good bull, and then she has a heifer calf. And that heifer calf, because now her mother is shifted a little farther in the right direction, and her father is all the way in the right direction, she's shifted even more. And so then her heifer calf is bred back to her father again. And you can keep doing that, and so you're ratcheting that spectrum of that female genetic farther and farther, and then maybe you have a bull calf, and that bull calf is ratcheted farther in the right direction than his original father, and so you just keep breeding that back into it.
And obviously, it's not like we're singular animals breeding back, but like on Greg's scale, because he's keeping like the 5 of his top from the previous year, and then all breeding quality stock from the.
Yeah.
No, so 5 from 2 years ago, basically all the young bulls from last year all go in as far as like breeding, and so
you get a weighted
highest
average.
fertility, highest, But
I'm just trying to explain on a one-to-one level like what's going on, right? And that's sort of how, just by culling, because the only thing that's happening is you're removing animals that get into that lower tier, and you can see them physiologically, they're in that lower tier, and you remove them out of the breeding pool. You're going to slowly start ratcheting in the right direction, even without adding any more genetics.
Another piece to that, too, is any calf born in an environment is better suited to survive in that environment than her or his mother was.
Yep.
And so each generation that you're keeping those animals back and then using them as breeding stock, theoretically they become better and better and better adapted to your environment and will perform better and better and better in the long run.
Yep.
So when you're bringing in new genetics, say a bull from 100 miles away or something, he's not adapted to, and it's not even necessarily the environment. It's things as much as like your management or, like your mineral program, your, all these different factors. Those calves born on your farm are going to be better adapted than any calf you could ever buy from anywhere.
Yep.
And so like doing that's also the advantage of the line breeding.
Yeah.
So
and I understand why the line breeding is controversial, because you need to have a certain size in order to avoid or minimize inbreeding.
Yep.
And inbreeding may still occur even at a larger scale just because of chance. And inbreeding is where a bull breeds his mother. That's inbreeding. And that's where you can get a lot more of those genetic deficiencies. And there may be some genetic deficiencies that occur in the line breeding, but I mean, we see it firsthand. Greg's been line breeding for years, and his genetics are absolutely incredible. And so it works, but there is something to be said for bringing in new genetics. You just have to be very careful of it's a gamble. You bring something into your farm, and he might just absolutely melt and not be able to perform under your management in your environment. Whatever. So it's always a risk, but it's sometimes nice to get a little bit of new genetic influence. I see people being afraid and against line breeding for for inbreeding reasons. But I mean, just from our personal experience, it works. I mean, we see it every day. We have some absolutely gorgeous animals out there that are a result of 2 decades of line breeding, basically. So,
yep.
That's I hope that answers your question. That's sort of a topic in and of itself. We could get into that of how to develop good genetics. You know what I mean? What does that even mean?
Right.
How do you get there? How do you tell a good grass genetic animal from an animal?
That's a topic I've been wanting to do. I got all these notes from the Steve Campbell.
Because not every cows. So this is the interesting thing, right? So when people say, in a conventional sense, cows are not designed to consume corn, or they're not designed to consume grains. They're ruminant animals. They're designed to graze, and so by putting them in feedlots, you're taking them out of that context. This is the whole narrative that gets told in the regenerative space, and it's true, but there's a big asterisk to it, which is modern genetics and modern breeding of ruminant animals has gotten them into this funky place where they're able to do well. They're able to they may still be sick or under stress because they're consuming a ton of grain, but the beneficial grass genetic traits have been bred out of them in favor for the grain-fed genetic traits. And so even though that animal may not be designed to eat grain, it's as close to designed to eat grain as it can be. So if you take that animal and you put it in a grass-based system that's bred to be in a grain-fed system, it's going to absolutely fall apart and probably die. I mean, eventually die. It'll just be super thin, be really difficult to breed back. Really, you need tons and tons of forage for it to perform super high quality stuff. So you run into tons of issues where there's a big division in stuff that's bred for grass genetics and stuff that's bred for grain genetics, even though the ruminant animal shouldn't necessarily be a grain-based creature. But it's sort of an interesting paradox of modern animal livestock management, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's a good topic, really good topic. So what we got? Anything else? We'll do a couple more.
Can you sleep through the house dogs barking now?
No.
Last night, did you wake up when Smokey came by? I don't even know what time that was.
Whoa. Right underneath our window.
Peel yourself off the ceiling. Oh my God. It gives you a heart attack. Yeah. He is so loud. I mean, he was right underneath.
He waits until he's right underneath, too. It's as close as he can. No, guys, wake up.
I smell something out here. Oh my God. Smokey, give it a rest. He's shuffling along. He's a giant dog.
Man, a bunch of these notes I got cut off because I couldn't write fast enough. So it's I've got half of it and then I don't understand.
Yeah. From
narrow
the
nose.
Castle of
Narrow nose is harder to, and then it's what is it harder to do?
He must have died when he was coughing it. We just watched Monty Python last night. For those who are
obscure
in deep,
reference.
yeah, that's an obscure reference.
Oh man.
Anyway.
How do you get electricity from farm to farm? Or do you have an energizer on each farm? How many joules for a 100-acre farm?
So the way we get electricity to each, we have 5 chargers? Something like that. But remember, this is not a continuous farm. There's multiple farms that are all separated out, and so those farms have to have their own chargers. But we have one charger that charges the entire North Place. One charger that charges all of Docks, which is 300 acres probably with everything in total over there, 270, something like that. And the way we get power around is the fences, for the most part. We just use them as perimeter fences. They're all electrified, but then the perimeter around the entire farm and some of the interior divisions, those are all hot hookups where you could use it to divide your interior fencing off of there. So we use the fencing to transmit electricity around the farm. If we need to go from one farm to another, like across a road, but we want to use the same charger, we have the luxury that we can put huge fiberglass rods in the ground that are 20 feet, 25 feet tall, and run a cable, or run a little high tensile wire across a road,
or under a bridge,
through a culvert, something like that. And so we'll sometimes have transmission lines, but if you're going to use a fence anyway, why not use the fence as your transmission line? And that's sort of how we work it. Whole perimeter is electrified, and some of the interior fencing, because there's very minimum interior fencing. Some of the interior fencing is all hot as well, and so the hookups are everywhere, and the power is everywhere. 100 acres, joule wise, you can probably get 18.
Yeah,
I'd go 18 joule.
Depends on if you're doing how many
wires you're running. Yep.
Yeah, if you're running like 6-strand all hot high tensile wire with a lot of brush load, it might be worth going like the 36. But a lot of the charger salesmen will have recommendations on mileage and like miles of fence you'll be charging, and what's the some of them even boil it down to acreage.
Yep.
Recommendations.
And as far as brands, since we're there already, Speedrite, which was formerly Stayfix, is like the Cadillac of fence chargers.
It's also the most expensive.
Really good charger. Cyclops, it's an American-made company. I think Speedrite is New Zealand-based. Cyclops is an American company. Also, absolute beasts of chargers. It's just they're a little bit more bare bones. They don't have all the bells and whistles, but the actual charger part, the part that matters, is super high quality. It's just, it doesn't come with one of those automatic shut-off compass deals where you can just put it on the fence when you're close enough to the charger and hit a button and the whole power will get killed. You gotta manually go to the charger and turn it off. You can still use like a voltmeter to be able to tell where a short is, but you can't turn the charger off, which there's workarounds. You could use Wi-Fi capability plugs to shut it off, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not that big a deal. Just have a bunch of switches.
Yeah. I don't know that the for me, I don't know that the remote is pretty handy.
Yeah, the remote is handy, but Speedrite, Cyclops, Gallagher.
As far as reliability, Cyclops is not going to be any less reliable.
That's what I'm saying. The actual charger quality is pretty much identical. Like they're both like top of the market chargers. It's just Speedrite has more bells and whistles as far as that remote shut off is really the biggest deal. Mm-hmm. The Cyclops has anyway. It's like we're being charger salesmen. Enough. But anyway, if you go to PowerFlex or somewhere to buy your fencing equipment, Timeless Fence. Talk to the reps. Talk to the people who sell the stuff. They know their stuff and they want to get you the best.
Tell them Greg sent you.
Yeah. Wink, wink.
He kind of did.
Yeah, he did indirectly through us because that's where we heard it from.
Yep.
Anyway, don't go to your local farm and home store and just buy a charger and use it for like a perimeter operation like you're talking about on 100 acres. You will be hating life
unless they carry
the Gallagher Cyclops Speedrite. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
There's one more, but I can't remember the name of it. It's like Nebo or something.
And solar chargers.
Zebo or something like that.
Zeba? I don't know. And solar chargers work in particular situations. The only bummer is if you're thinking about moving it every day, I mean, that is a pain. I mean, there's ways to do it and people do it, but I mean, I would much rather go with the plug-in option and figure out a way to transmit the voltage around the farm. Mm-hmm. If you want to supplement the electricity that's going into that outlet with solar panels, go for it. But yeah, I know I saw something with somebody out there, the grass-fed cowboy. You know what I'm talking about? He does a lot of solar stuff, or he's been doing it, and it seems to be working out for him. So go check him out on Instagram.
He's a bicyclist. He likes riding his bike around his farm and stuff.
I think he's like a photographer for like professional mountain bikers.
He came to one of the grazing schools and he had some phenomenal photos. They were so cool. Yeah, go check him out. Grass-fed Cowboy is his.
I'm pretty
handle.
sure that's what it is.
Yeah, it is.
Good guy.
I think he's based out of Virginia too.
Yeah.
So
I think it's Red Devons if people are interested.
Yep. If anybody's in Virginia.
Yeah. What do we want? One or two more?
Sure. Where do you guys get the mineral premix from?
It's a local place. It's in
Chillicothe.
Yeah. For those who are in Missouri, that's the only that would be helpful for those people. But other than that, it's just a local. There's another cattleman in North Missouri that sort of got the mix, like originally created. And he's one of Greg's good friends and counterparts in the regenerative grazing space, and so he trusts Dennis because Dennis's animals are on there, and he has some amazing genetics up there, and so his animals have thrived on it. So that's where Greg went when he was looking for a higher quality mineral. It's not that it's not a higher quality mineral because Dennis clearly is doing something right. You know what I mean? I think it's really more just circling back to it. Yeah, really briefly. I think it's just
need to do it every topic.
Yeah, I think it's just that they're not used to it. I think that's what it is. I don't think anyone.
It seems like we just circle in circles sometimes.
Yeah, that's part of it though.
It's good though. I mean, everything connects to everything.
If people hate it, just go look at the YouTube because I got everything clipped out. You can just eliminate all of the BS in between everything and just go right down to the point. But yeah, anyway.
Give me the meat and potatoes.
Give me the meat and potatoes.
So we only have 2 questions left.
All right, let's crank them out and then call it. No
I am
more.
Sweating.
Yeah, I know. We need to crack a window, but when we do that,
rain.
Yeah, it was gonna rain, and also when we do that, the peepers are deafening in the audio. But people kind of like it. And comment down below if you hate the peepers.
I like the peepers.
Okay, I heard my first whippoorwill last night.
Whippoorwill.
I heard him for the first time.
Whippoorwill.
People who live in this part of the country know what I'm talking about. Those dudes are relentless.
Wasn't there? Did you just say there was an owl outside?
There was an owl like literally 10 feet outside of the. There was another one down across the creek, maybe I don't know, like a quarter mile away, and they were just going at it the other night at like 11. But yeah,
Isaac with all the sound effects tonight.
Yeah. Barred owl. If people are wondering what that is, that was a pretty good impression on your part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like to speak owl enough time.
Yeah.
Do the cows/bulls tend to rub on neighbors' mailboxes and other stuff? Cattle drives. Do you have to put cages around them?
When the cattle drives, they're just moving.
Yeah.
Although one the other day was checking the neighbor's mail. I saw that when we were going up the Jan's drive. There's that one mailbox.
Yeah.
He was like, he had his nose up and he was looking in the mailbox because it's just like an open one or whatever. He's like, oh,
what's in there?
You got any mail? But we're moving, so they don't really hang out for that long.
We keep them moving. We're at the back pushing them, so they don't. If we were to just open it and let them do it, they might. But
they probably would rub on it. Maybe check the mail.
If it's really wet, we'll run a wire. If it's like someone's got like a nice road frontage or something, we'll run a wire up. A cold wire in front of it, and the cattle will stay off of it. But that
because they don't like walking on gravel roads because it's uncomfortable on their little feet, and so they prefer walking in the grass or in the mud on the side of the road.
And sometimes if there's like a tire track where it's like there's no like rocks, it's just hard. They'll all get in a single file line, head to butt, and there'll be like 30 cows all walking in a single line. It's kind of cool.
Yep. Like. Make way for ducklings.
Yep.
Yeah.
So based on some of the comments, some people love the peepers. So
some people love the peepers.
Windows maybe.
No. It shakes the whole room when we open the window. We're almost done.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question. Do you make any other electrified gates besides the rope gates?
The rope gates are the best, just from a durability and conductivity and adjustment standpoint.
Of the spring gates on box.
The only issue with the spring gate is that it's also expensive, and if a deer hits it, it's completely trashed. Mm-hmm. You got to buy a whole new spring. They're not as durable. We've got some
because the landowner likes them.
Landowner likes them in that particular sense, so you do it. They're nice. They're nice to use. It's just
because you open it and bring, and then you go through and then bring.
Just don't let go of it.
Yeah,
I've done that before.
And then it was hot, and we were trying to.
It's like the worst slinky tangle of all time. You're trying not to shock yourself, and it's all like mashed in on itself. Oh, it's so bad. Yeah. We've got some straight up high tensile with a handle on the end,
some tape.
And then just some of that flat like electrified poly tape or whatever, the cheap
just
stuff.
Visual.
It is annoying though because that tape it just breaks, and then you got like hanging pieces that are electrified, and you need to make it more visual because sometimes the cattle can't see just a single a longer stretch of just a single wire like that, especially if it's a gate, because usually that gate's got a funnel or something towards it where there's gonna be pressure going there, because that's where they go through the gate. So we have that situation.
I think it'd be nice to change a bunch of that out for rope.
I agree. I think the rope is, you just eat that cost buying the whatever, it's $120 a roll or something like that, but it's like 300 feet or more of rope, and it just
doing gates that'll last long.
It lasts,
especially if you use
gates.
Single strand too. If you just use a handle and a rope.
And what's nice about the rope gates is you can tie it, like hook it on, and if it loosens just from being used a bunch, just turn your fence off, retie it so it's tighter, and just keep using it. Like it's not, if you cut a high tensile wire to make a gap or a gate like that, and it's not long enough, or you get a little bit of slack in that post that it's attached to or whatever, you just have to redo it. You can't like undo it, and I mean you could, but you have to crimp it back together.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a fan of the rope gates.
I am too.
If someone else out there has got
technically, oh sorry,
I was just about to say, if someone else out there has a gate solution that we don't know about, throw it in the comments or leave me a DM or Isaac a DM or whatever, and I'd love to hear other people's electrified gate solutions. What were you gonna say?
Technically, those like rope gates are actually gaps.
Yeah, Greg was explaining this to us that
in Missouri, it's like
that at least in Missouri, if you have more than one wire, that's like that you're using as part of your gate, if you can imagine that, where you've got a bunch of electrified rope,
post.
So that's on a post that you like
hook
loop in, and you've got like a whole fence, and then you undo it, and it's all attached. That's technically a gap,
not a gate.
And not a gate.
Don't call it a gate.
It's a gap, and the gate is when it's one.
Yep.
And just a handle on the end of it.
But then there's like metal gates that's like 5.
It's like, I think it's like how they call like ponds lakes here. You know what I mean? And Greg has a 1 acre. Greg has a 1 acre. Greg has a 1 acre pond. Greg has a 1 acre pond, beautiful pond right outside the house down here below the trailer, and he calls it his lake, but
it's a pond.
Yeah, where you're from, it's a pond. From Michigan, where he comes from, it's a pond. And where I come from, it's definitely a pond, because we call the Atlantic Ocean the pond. So if that's a pond, I don't know what this is. You know what I mean? It's a puddle.
A puddle. It's a
mud waller.
Pink waller.
But yeah. Anyway.
Yes, that was a good one. That was a long one.
Yeah, it's good times.
Mm-hmm.
Fun times. Glad we got to do it. We have grazing school next weekend. No guarantees, but it's Thursday through Saturday, so we should be free on Sunday night, I would assume. Greg's probably going to be asleep for a day and a half, because that's usually how that works after one of these.
We probably will too, honestly.
But
I mean, we'll be here, but if we can.
Might maybe just pound some coffee after dinner, and we'll hit it. You know what I mean?
No, thank you.
No, I wouldn't.
Tomorrow's Monday, we get to drink coffee.
Yeah, we do. Just trying to curb the caffeine addiction.
Why are we talking about this?
Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. If you're still here, we'll see you all next week. I apologize for the delayed post of last week's stuff onto YouTube. It was posted today. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. If you want to listen to this as a podcast, I'm going to post a couple more that have been delayed also and being posted as podcasts coming up either tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Thanks, everybody. Out.
Toodles.